So Keshav sir can chair this session, or you would like to do something?
नहीं
No, no, I am a presenter in this session. So I think Mr. Sir can, because he will be also leaving, so he should something before he leaves.
tasks.
इतने खराब टास्क
No, it's not kharab.
AC.
Yeah, it is warm.
Asmita, AC सेटा ऑन कर दो, सेटा ऑन कर दो. हाँ, put it.
Put it.
और tourism beta. This one. Okay. Hi, Vidu. Hi. Coming. Oh, I am not connected. So in between, if somebody request to join, you have to approve it. Yes, it will be a little bit disturbing, but
That appears on this.
yes. Or
for 2036. To start with, tourism as an industry, it is actually one of the world's largest and fastest growing industries after chemicals and fuels, and ahead of food and um, uh, that automotive products. In terms of international tourism revenue, it is generating 1.7 trillion US dollar international tourism revenue from around 1.47 million international tourist arrivals. Looking at the tourism's contribution to GDP, in 2019, the travel and tourism industry contributed 10.3% to global GDP, the share which decreased to 5.3% in 2020 because of the pandemic around the world. But nevertheless, the share has again increased. And as per the WTTC 2022 report, it is in 2021, the share has increased to 6.1%. What is more important as an industry is its contribution in terms of GDP as well as in terms of employment generation. Travel and tourism accounted for 1 in 4 of all new net jobs, which are created across the world because of its direct, indirect, and induced impact. Now, in 2018, around 123 million jobs were created, and in 2029, it is expected to increase up to 154 million jobs. What's the projection for the industry worldwide? UNCTAD's 2022 report claimed that international tourist arrivals worldwide, they are expected to increase by 3.3% per year, but it is although a modest rate between 2010 to 2030. And there is another report of WHO 2018 who claimed that by 2029, With 2.196 billion international tourists, this industry is expected to generate expenses of 2.484 trillion US dollar. Coming to the link between tourism and economic development, there are two constructs which we have taken in our chapter. One, that is tourism-led growth hypothesis, which talks that how tourism plays a very intense role because of its benefit in terms of foreign exchange, tax revenue generation, employment creation, and overall its contribution to GDP. Basically, it talks about how tourism creates employment, how tourism plays an important role for diversification of growth, how it pushes innovation, technology. But on the other hand, there is another theory which talks about economic driven tourist growth hypothesis, which basically claims that tourism growth of a country is dependent on economic growth of a region. So on one hand, tourism creates or develops the economy, but there is on the other hand, the economic growth, like what is the level of education of the destination, what are the income level of the destination, how secured, how safe a place is, what's the governance structure, what's the policy of government of a place. They basically drive this tourism. Coming to world tourism and snapshot, I'll just give a brief glimpse like how where India stands. It is as per the tourism satellite account, which is based on the tourism direct contribution to gross domestic product. India's stands position is in A. In terms of its contribution to GDP, it is around 3.8%. The arrivals of tourism, it has been increasing in India. The FTAs, we can see it has increased from, if I say 2000, it was around 2 million, which has increased to 10 million in 2017. If we leave aside 2020 because of the pandemic, we can see 2019, 10.93 million foreign tourist arrivals are there in India with a percentage change of 3.4. And if foreign exchange earnings earned is around 30.05 in US million dollar in 2019 with a change registering a growth of 5%. Looking at the contribution of travel and tourism to GDP of India, we see that overall it has maintained a steady picture, although the picture was gloomy in 2020, but 2021 it has again started increasing, and the contribution in 29 is 178 US million dollar. The number of jobs, the best part is number of jobs in travel and tourism sector in India is over a period of 1420, the 6 years we have taken. So it has constantly the number of jobs are increasing. Jobs in tourism connected industries and tourism characteristic industry, both there has been increase in number of jobs. Now the main picture is which are the top performing, the top 10 states or union territories in India. Now looking at the picture, I hope it is visible. So we see the left hand is in terms of domestic tourist arrivals and the right part is foreign tourist visits. So in terms of domestic tourist visits, the top 10 states like Tamil Nadu is the top performer with having a share of 17.02 percentage, followed by Uttar Pradesh, it's around 16%. Then comes Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka. So Odisha is nowhere even in top 10 position. And in terms of foreign tourist visits, it is Punjab, which is the top performer in terms of foreign tourist arrivals. Then we have Delhi, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, and Kerala. Kerala is in fifth position in terms of foreign tourist visits. Neither in terms of domestic tourist visits nor in terms of foreign tourist visits, Odisha is not in the place of top 10 tourist destinations in India. Now I'll take it to the picture of Odisha, how what is happening to the arrivals of tourists in the state. If we look at the data from 2011 to 2019, ignoring 2021, in some cases, in some period, the rate is very high. Like in 2014, the percentage change is 10%. But then in 2019, the change is only by 0.6% in terms of domestic tourist arrivals. In terms of foreign tourist arrivals, 2017 was very high, 30.98, whereas in case of 2019, the rate has again come down. Looking at the trend, we do not find any consistency rate of change. Some years it has increased and some years it has drastically reduced. We have tried to give a comparative picture of Odisha just with its neighbor states and see the neighbor states like Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka, even Telangana is doing better compared to Odisha. Whereas looking at Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, and Odisha, we are more or less in the similar position. But in terms of the type of product that we are meeting with the demand of tourists, we are no less than Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, or even the other parts of the other states which are doing fairly well in case of tourism in India. The famous tourist sites you see, none of a district, it's almost all the districts we are having some or other product, whether it is in terms of hill, beaches, or in terms of wildlife, forest, everything we are having. We are trying to meet every type of demand of the tourists, whether it's in terms of, say, Blue Flag Beach or um, wild biodiversity of Bitakanika or Simlipal. This is a secondary source report from 2019. In terms of number of beaches, we have 22 beaches. If I see the data of Maharashtra, it is 38, but after Maharashtra, we are in the second position, 22. In terms of hill station, the number is 9. In terms of monuments of national importance, it is 78. Whereas in terms of tourist performance, neither in terms of domestic tourist arrivals nor in terms of foreign tourist arrivals, we are coming in top 10 state. Just if we can compare, we see that, for example, Kerala, where the monuments of national importance are only 26, whereas in Odisha, we have 78. Similarly, if we compare with, say, Andhra Pradesh, hill stations are 9, we are also having 9. Then these are the states which are doing far better than what we are doing at present. I'll take you now to the policies for developing tourism in Odisha. The 2013 policy, which started giving a focus on tourism and giving importance on sustainable tourism, ecotourism, heritage tourism, and also religious tourism. But overall, when we try to examine the policy measures that have been taken by the state government, we see that more or less the focus has been same, whether in terms of religious tourism, sustainable tourism, or ecotourism. We started with 2013 and we are still giving the same importance to only on these products. 2020 policy of Odisha tourism, it started aiming at developing 13 priority destinations and 9 tourism circuits so that they meet world class standards. In between, we also tried to give emphasis on Buddhist tourism, but actually, if we look at the ground level, for example, the Ratnagiri, which we are proclaiming to be a very famous Buddhist site, and we try to meet the world class standards, but it's actually not meeting as per the standards which we are setting in the policy. Recently, the 2022 tourism policy, it has just announced in December. So resolutions have been taken to promote the brand image of Odisha nationally as well as internationally. Now we are trying to get more tourists. Maybe with Odisha being the sports hub now in the country, like we have already hosted 2018 International Hockey World Cup, where the calculation says that there has been an increase of 60% tourist footfall, and now we are organizing the second International Hockey World Cup. But then the more focus is only on in terms of policy measures, like eco retreats are organized, eco camps are being organized. Currently, we have identified 41 eco tourism destinations and 7 eco retreat camps are happening. But then what the policy measure says, the focus is on incentives, meeting incentives, conference, exhibition tourism, which is at present not doing. We cannot say that at least it has maintained a standard, but it is not doing, and we are not able to generate those kind of business tourists who will come to the state with the purpose of meeting or with the purpose of conference. Exhibitions to some extent we are doing, but the more focus is on the prominent tourist places like Bhubaneswar, Puri. These are the places. Beach tourism, then heritage tourism. In terms of monuments, I will show you how Odisha is growing. We see the Sun Temple of Konark, for which we proudly claim that it is one of the only heritage site of Odisha, but it is not figuring even in the top 5 central monuments, which draws maximum domestic visitors. And as per the estimates of 21-22, it slipped to rank 7 when it comes to domestic arrivals, with 6.72 lakh domestic tourists and 314 foreign tourists in the year. So overall, the CAGR growth rate of domestic tourists, when India it is 13.52% from 99 to 2008 19, and foreign tourists it's overall 8.5%. In case of Odisha, the CAGR growth rate of domestic tourist in 19 it is only 0.65. If we compare with the previous year, it was 8%, 8.5. Coming to the foreign tourists, sometimes it is 3.8, sometimes it is 10.8. There is no consistency in terms of growth rate, neither in domestic tourists nor in arrivals, nor in terms of foreign tourist arrivals. Now, in our chapter, we have tried to give a comparative picture of Odisha vis-a-vis Tamil Nadu. Why Tamil Nadu? Because now it is the top performing state. Now, you see, in terms of whether inbound tourist, international, or inbound trips with other states, the figures. Okay, the figures are quite higher. Now, I will look at the gross value addition at basic price. We are almost less than half in respect to Tamil Nadu state. Like, share in all India of Tamil Nadu is 8.64, whereas in Odisha the gross value addition is only 2.46. Similarly, the tourism direct GVA, if we take, it is 8% for Tamil Nadu, whereas it's even less than half for Odisha. But in terms of destinations, now if you ask in terms of destinations, are we not having sufficient destinations? No, we have sufficient number of destinations. We have sufficient number of places where you talk of any kind of product we have in Odisha. So what we have done a primary survey to find out how tourists actually, what tourists they want from Odisha. In our primary survey, we have collected data of 519 respondents, and 78 were from Odisha, 22 from other states. Mainly, we have taken West Bengal because that's the prominent place from where tourists come to Odisha. Then we have some people from Tamil Nadu, Andhra, Telangana. What they have emphasized is the first thing is overall infrastructure like road networks, airports, train system, bus system, accommodation quality, sanitation, and safety. Like of late, we are giving more importance on pilgrimage tourism, but the kind of waste disposal or waste management we are having, it is very poor, and we do not have a kind of proper system for waste management. So that is one particular factor which most of the respondents have highlighted, that sanitation and waste management. In case of second components, we have found destination characteristics like what is the entertainment quality, the friendly attitude of service providers. We in policy mentions that we have sufficient number of tourist information centers, but broadly speaking, most of the information centers neither do have proper information to guide the tourist properly, nor they are proactive in developing some kind of tourist packages so that we can retain the customers, and also we can create a satisfaction, create a best satisfaction to provide a best satisfaction to those tourists. The third component is terms of local well-being. Basically, we have failed in integrating local products with terms in tourism. When we talk of multiple benefits that is coming from tourism in terms of multiplier, but Odisha as a state has mostly failed to develop to bring those multiplier, because local products, local art, local culture, these are quite lacking in our industry. We have sufficient number of SHGs, but if we could have roped in those SHGs, particularly we could have brought women also as an important stakeholder, also, and we could have also empowered them by giving them some kind of benefit, so that they could have been economically empowered. And the last component we have constructed is shopping, which is very important, because wherever we go to any place, we try to find some of the local products which so as to keep our memory afresh, where also in Odisha we are lacking here. In terms of forecasted values for domestic tourist visits, it is 1.8. It's going to be in 2036, it's going to be 1.8 million. And though foreign tourist, the arrival will not be very high, but it is above 2 lakh. Now, coming to the infrastructure part, we do not have sufficient number of hotels to accommodate this kind of tourists by 2036. So, unless we develop proper strategies, we make proper strategies, will not be able to generate benefit from this growing industry for as a state. So we have one section where we have broadly elaborated how state can take the policy measures proactively. Basically, we have highlighted under 6 A's: accessibility, attraction, activities, available packages, like packages in terms of when we talk of retaining cultural tourists because they stay longer in a destination, amenities, and the last one is ancillary services. So whether we talk more of ecotourism or sports tourism, we have to take measures in terms of the 6 A's. Like when we say ecotourism, we have to also find out whether the tourist arrivals are hampering the biodiversity of the place. So only promoting ecotourism without giving sufficient emphasis on environment is not actually helping, will not help the state. Rather, it will have a negative impact on environment. So these are the broad headings under which we have suggested, so that we can make Odisha as a preferred tourist destination in 2036. So this is also. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Uh, yeah. So can we have some reactions on this presentation? Comments, clarification? Yeah.
So a good presentation. My first reaction when you have done a primary survey, have you taken any Rajasthani tourist?
No, sir,
But
Rajay,
if you
because
take, situation will be different. If you tell in Odisha, the spending pattern of the tourist, it is the Rajasthani tourist who spends more than a West Bengal tourist. Okay, so when you take the economic, the spending pattern, then we should attract more Rajasthani than West Bengal. So that type of thing you just see.
actually we did a snowball sampling. So
Okay.
that's how.
But secondary data is available.
Okay,
Secondary data available, spending pattern. Okay, so that is one. Second,
what's the source, sir?
the tourism department, the OTC, that the second point is there is a shift of this tourism flow from religious and this traditional to ecotourism or
Correct.
health tourism.
Correct.
Okay, so that shift, how it is shifting in different place, and what is the prediction of in 36, what type of more tourists you are going to attract. So that point it will make
Ecotourist we have, sir, but like medical tourism
so
will
that part
Putting the projection, what is the breakup?
break. So because there is a shift of the tourist choice.
Correct.
Okay. Then that I was asking, if you'll see the interstate domestic tourist, interstate tourist, whom you will target. Even in the domestic, whom you will target? You will target West Bengal or you will target Rajasthan. Okay. Then when you are telling about infra, it is not only the quantity. There are demand from foreign tourists. I want to spend this much of money. There is no hotel available in Bhubaneswar.
No, we have it, sir. We have the data of classified hotels. What are the number of
No,
bed?
hotel. My point is, you are focusing on quantity of hotels should increase.
No,
Number of hotels
we have
should
quality.
increase.
We because
And
of the
quality,
paucity
in
of
the
time we
quality,
couldn't.
when there are people, there are surveys which tells people are demanding this type of service. It is not
We are not
available in
having.
Bhubaneswar.
Correct, sir.
Okay, and thanks to now at least some airport is increasing the transport facility. That is a good thing. But again, these three small Jaipur, Raulkela, this is not the only thing. We need also lot of this. If you will target for international tourists, so that these are some of the points which we can take care of.
Yes, anyone else? Yes,
And also, if you want a tourism multiplier case, if you will bring the income aspect, there is a good literature on tourism multiplier. How the employment and tourism multiplier.
No, we have the data.
Yeah.
We have made the presentation as per the timeline.
okay.
given.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Presentation is actually one of its kind. including macro service, micro level study. I'm still yet to comprehend what you highlighted many factors, okay? Maybe stopping Odisha to reap all the benefits from tourism, okay? Could you please just, identify at least that one factor, which is actually the major one, keep, putting hindrances to reap all the benefits? Because you highlighted ecotourism one side, okay? You talked about the cultural aspect, heritage aspect. What role actually community-based ecotourism has to play? Um,
Are you asking, or are you? Is it a suggestion?
no. One is what actually the major one factor which is actually stopping Odisha to reap the
You
benefits.
point
Major challenge.
Okay.
One
Major
challenge.
challenge.
Major challenge in your view which stops Odisha from realizing its potential. You highlighted so many, 6 or 7 A's,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Hmm.
Those are all suggestions.
Hmm.
But among those suggestions, at least one factor is really it's the barrier, and these 6 are the solutions.
Okay, maybe if you ask, it is first will be the lack of infrastructure. Like Sir said, not only infrastructure, when we talk of infrastructure, not in terms of only hotels quantity or quality, but also in terms of the quality of service that we provide, in terms of connectivity, in terms of transporting, and in terms of also the proper information to the tourist. So the overall, this is one of the most important factor which is creating or which is posing obstacle.
And also in terms of personnel, I would like to it includes personnel, the kind of service providers, the people who are providing their attitude, their training, and the community participation is also a part of that infrastructure. There's always a kind of trait that the tourist is always exploited. So that kind of scenario is we have not come out of that. I mean, it's not a properly systematic thing should be there. So that I mean, the proper if I go to a place, I have to pay this much of money. I mean, you cannot. No bargaining should be there. It should be standardized.
Correct.
So that kind of I mean, it's always like a tourist first.
Yes, please. Yes, Daso, please.
No, I mean, it's a detailed presentation, but I am sort of wondering, like, because you are talking about a vision document, like, how you are sort of thinking about, like, there's a lot of new studies which have come up, what is actually maybe described as the tourism global value chains. So, like, sort of a lot of places, particularly places like Odisha, which has its lot of heritage sites and natural sort of what you call it, sightseeing destinations. So very often what happens, so we get caught in this kind of, okay, people coming from West Bengal or Tamil Nadu, and you think that that is how the sector is going to take off. So there's a lot of work going on globally, which is focusing on this value chain. So this value chain, in fact, if you are taking the extended value chain, that in fact sort of relates to starting from the person who's actually, let's say, selling or producing a small artifact there, let's say local artisan making something. So that is actually linked to the global tourist, the flight operator maybe in Canada. So that kind of a value chain in which if you are part of it, so everything is taken care, and there is also something called the process standards within the tourism sector. So that is where much of the quality issues are taken care, because someone has certified, okay, these are the places you can stay. So this is the place from where you can buy, and how actually you can sort of link up to that.
Sir, value chain linkage we have given with the use of tourism satellite account data that has National Applied Council Research, Madam. So we have that value chain linkage, but process standard we'll try to get.
No,
get
value
it.
chain globally, I'm saying, not value chain within the state.
Okay.
So it's a
global value.
It's like a global tourist
Uh-huh.
wants to buy something from Pipli, for instance. Upon Pipli go to Choto, Chandua, something small item he wants to buy. So that linkage actually. So there is a lot of work going on in how to ensure that the product is, let's say, represents a particular heritage or place or tradition or whatever. It's a genuine product, and all the services from the place that person starts and reaches here and goes back. So all this, including a lot of health support services. So it is not just the site and you go as a visitor. So there are several other sort of sectors which need to be intervened,
Okay.
and in which a lot of internet portals have to be developed. So those are the ways by which we do.
Technology also we
Yeah,
have.
otherwise, on the typical standard tourism stories are actually about how many number of tourists came here, what is the total income. So that tells us very little actually.
No, I think that is a status description which has to be there. But my feeling is that one thing that is missing, you are telling in more louder and variety of ways when you are comparing. For instance, one analysis of your side like the most. See, if you say beaches, these are called sites, and in relative terms, when you look at across states, they are better here, but we are not able to reap the
Explore.
potential of it. Question is one dimension which in your thing, I don't know whether you have done, but presentation did so. What are the promotional efforts? And tourism sector should not be read in isolation.
Yes.
Often, if you do it in isolation, this kind of pattern will emerge. What has emerged for you? Nothing wrong. But promotional effort, by you're telling why Tamil Nadu is doing well. I'm telling you, I'm not doing research also. Go to a Tamil Nadu hotel, even a small stage hotel. That fellow will have a map
Yeah.
where all to go. He will have a facility, which transport facility to be done. So what happens? This has to be indirectly incentivized by the state. Private agencies do for profit. We do agree. But what are our promotional measures? Don't go by tourism corporation and all. Promotional measures have to evolve with changing times, because you don't have to. I even personally don't trust that increasing foreign tourists is going to gain us much. In fact, domestic tourism share is significant, and it
No, we
changes.
have also highlighted,
Yeah,
sir, in
that's it.
spite of foreign tourist arrivals, we should focus more on domestic tourist visit because they are the ones which are actually helping us to
Because
develop.
as a vision document,
Huh.
what like Professor Das is right, we should flag some newer aspects
Correct, sir.
that is perhaps not discussed or not taken into account. If you do that, obviously, like somebody can pick it up. Like even a government body or a secretary reads a bullet point saying that he calls what are the promotional measures we have in the state, and it's pretty clear that we have some conventional ones only. So one trigger is enough. I mean, we are successful. Good.
Why Tirupati attracting more? Why Puri not?
Yeah, that.
Economy.
Yeah.
Sometimes some Chandrababu Naidu and other they are telling if Chilka will be in Andhra Pradesh, that is the only tourist spot I can make it. I can make it in the whole Chilka that international tourist will be full. But
True, sir.
what is the Chilka potential? So much potential. Of course, that is on infrastructure.
Yes.
There's a small doubt, it's really not a question or observation. It seems we all are a part of, economic association only. And we are dealing with a state which is a poorest state of, the country. So whenever we are, yes, we are not doing well from different indicators, with social economic indicators. What I'm trying to say is whenever we are suggesting something in terms of infrastructure, okay, be it quantity develop, increase in quantity or quality improvement, can't we add this opportunity cost part? We have a limited budget. If we want to spend something on tourism, we have to compromise on other
Don't have the
things.
misunderstanding. State has to really
Yes.
do. This document we will create. This is no state doesn't have to pour money. We have resources. We have to public-private partnership. We have other who runs hotels. How many government hotels are there? In fact, the
They are
current
not
government doesn't
working
want to
also.
run hotels anymore.
Yes.
They want to sell
Pansa
them.
Nivas is
Travel,
Yeah.
sir, the travel agency.
Yeah.
If I want a visa, I'm applying. No, we are not doing. There is no travel agency who can do my visa, my facilitated.
true, true, sir.
So
Commerce
that is
Bank
what
having
I'm
a small
saying.
center here.
Bringing
Commerce,
a
the big
scheme
one
of
having a
things.
small shop here. Sita closed it. Travel agent, the international travel agents.
Yes.
Just one point, when I did listen to the presentation, that if you have not discussed it, there's a political economy dimension to it, particularly certain kinds of tourism. If you have to look at, say, Vipakanika or Chadai Hogan inside Chichalika, they are protected area. And Simripal is protected area. And now even the coastal promotion that is happening all over India and in Odisha particularly, they call this one blue flag beaches, tourist beaches basically. They are in a way also enclosures. these are creating enclosures,
Mm.
so which is basically taking out the local community who have been using these resources or space for certain kinds of activity to promote tourism. So that tourism is conflicting with the livelihood, or tourism is actually supporting or with livelihood. That's a dimension. At least flagging it would be a very
Yeah.
interesting.
No, we have
dimension.
included, sir. Like I talked about Simlipal and Bhitarkanika. We are promoting ecotourism just in the sake of promoting ecotourism, alienating people from those who have been dependent. We are not helping them to, or we are not empowering them. So that part we have, sir.
It's difficult to envelop everything. But
In
we should be specific
yes,
on it.
yes.
That may come in the livelihood part.
In fact, that chapter is already lengthy.
Yeah, right.
You have to cut down.
You see, all the chapters, agriculture, you can make 5 days seminar. Tourism, you can make.
No, that's okay,
But
because I
yes.
think it's
Yes.
a tremendous job done, and I think we are only interested in how we will direct ourselves.
Yes,
Our
yes.
risk is different.
Our test, we are
Our
to-
vested interest is different. Your work, we have to somehow. Yes.
When we are using 6 or 3 years, we are actually using neurocentric model.
Uh-huh.
So how we are going to apply it in Odisha?
You are talking of 6 A's that I just discussed. No, I said the whatever suggestions we have given, whether in case of promoting sports tourism or rural tourism, we are dividing it under 6 heads. Like if I say available packages, what kind of information I am giving. Say for example, if a person is visiting Pipili, what nearby places a person should visit. I should have a link, like a person is coming and visiting, say Puri, I can take or drag him to Chilika, or I should drag him to Bhitarkanika. That kind of package we have to create, depending upon the requirement, depending upon the type of the tourist. Like sir was talking about, now there has been a shift from pilgrimage tourism to ecotourism. More number of people are coming when the tag of eco, green, and sustainable tourism they are here, they are given. So how we are going to tap those kind of people under the broad 6 heads, that is what I have tried to give. I have not giving any subsections in that. So overall our idea is like, when you are promoting ecotourism, you should also calculate what should be the carrying capacity. Like there has been a report of CDA, Chilika Development Authority, because of the increasing footfalls of tourists, now there is a danger to the dolphins. So in spite of taking people to Chilika, we can take them to other parts which are less explored. So that is how we are trying to develop the whole way forward.
Thank you very much.
Thank
I have
you,
to
sir.
call upon the next person.
Should I close it?
Sir, I will make the next.
Yeah, you will.
Or you want? You want? Okay. Hi, there.
आ जाओ.
Yes.
So thank you very much.
This is on marginalization, dispossession, and natural resource-based livelihood.
Yes. Coming to your.
We have already.
No people.
No, then still you can speak.
We have our draft. No, sir, drive there.
It's fine, no problem.
Yeah. It's connect online. No?
Yeah, and are there people online? No, there
Yeah,
are three
yeah.
people.
There are.
3 including Amarendra.
No. Sometimes people come in and go. Why we have a link, we should show that.
So thank
Okay.
you. Thank you, Professor Mishra, for this opportunity, and thank you, Amarendra and Professor Kesabdas, for this opportunity.
Okay, silence.
Yes.
So, as it was the topic that was given to us was on natural resource management, and that is the context on which we wanted to look at Odisha Vision 2036. So, in this chapter basically would be developed by myself, Madhusmita, who is here, and Saswat, who is not here. And so we had some initial deliberations around this. So we thought that one of the aspects, I'm not sure if the other chapters are doing that because there are quite a bit of overlap that we see. But we thought that we'll look at basically marginalization and dispositions, particularly relating to natural resource-based livelihood. And what eludes Odisha was the part of our question. It's with the assumption of or basis of some kind of facts that something has definitely is eluded, because the eluding has been seen in different forms of protest or movements. So we thought that that would be the basis of our research. Uh, we have broadly made an outline, so it's still preliminary, you can say. And based on our discussion, we limited our scope to 3 resources, and it's not limiting in that way. It's also comes basically because of our own expertise in some ways. Madhusmita has been working on forest related issues, so forest became an important issue. Sashwat has been working on mining related issues, so mining was an important issue. Of late, I have developed interest in coastal and marine issues, so we took that as another important issue. And with taking these 3 important resource-based livelihood, we felt that it covers quite a significant component of Odisha's geography. The forest-wise, Odisha is almost 40% area is under different types of forest cover. Mining has been one of the major source of revenue for the state. It kind of exceeds disproportionately to with compared to all India level. And Odisha has quite a significant coastline of 450 kilometers, and the fishing area increases dramatically. And but the other thing is that there has been very little that has been discussed about the coastal and coastal communities, particularly the fishing related communities. Beyond Chilika, we have barely any discussion around it. So we thought that maybe that is another important dimension that we should look at, particularly that Odisha government's current propositions towards blue economy based development model. I think it's an interesting thing to look at, particularly when we're envisioning by 36 how we should be there. So in that sense, these 3 resources are just not resources, but it covers quite a significant portion of and represents Odisha in a lot more meaningful way. And the second part of it is that what makes Odisha a little more difficult is that we know that the complexity of dependency of these resources and the diversity of the community. We always talk about 62 different tribes are there who are forest dependent, and mining areas often come into those areas. We know little about the coastal communities who are dependent on fishing, but there has been different kinds of conflicts that has been happening in these areas. And these are also interrelated. So, so one side we have the diversity and complexity of community. One side, these resources are so important. The economy, to a large extent, depends on this. So when we are putting these two things together, how we can kind of envision Odisha that there can be a lesser of conflict, and the development essentially leads to well-being of people and resources. So that required some kind of a conceptual or theoretical framework. So we deliberated on this, that what kind of theoretical framework essentially would explain this kind of dispositions, marginalization that we are trying to look at. So we scanned through a different set of basically economic principles, but you know that neoclassical approaches of optimization, maximization doesn't really reflect this kind of issues of how marginalization is happening. So broadly 2 framework. One, what we call is the socio-ecological system approach. The other one is political ecology or political economy approach. These 2 broadly resembled with what we are trying to look at. So socio-ecological system approach looks at gives emphasis into the social or livelihood aspects of the community involved in that resources. At the same time, ecology also, the ecosystem that is on which they are dependent on. So we can't think of one and the discount the other one. So if we don't look at the ecological resources that we have, and that being used sustainably, you can't perpetually think of that the community also will be able to extract or make use of these resources perpetually. So how to balance between the ecological needs and social needs is an important thing. But there has been critiques on socio-ecological approach also, because they intend to generalize the community. They think that okay, it is a community of homogeneous community, you can form collective and they can take it, but it doesn't take into account the heterogeneity of the community. So that is where the political ecology or political economy approach, which is based on Marxist tradition, of course, that helps us. So we are not kind of singling out that okay, we will stick to socio-ecological systems approach or we'll stick to only political ecology approach, but try to look at these two approaches, which can help us understanding the situation from what is the context of Odisha, where the marginalization is happening, and how we can go forward to envision, which can be at least arrest the dispositions, if not absolutely giving all kinds of rights to the community and resources. And somewhere this the centrality has to, it's not singular, but centrality has to be on the ecosystem and the communities, and most importantly the vulnerable community. So keeping this kind of framework in mind, we are also uh, the broad question that we have is that what eludes the transformation of natural resource extraction into sustainable development outcomes. So SDG has been a kind of a framework for us to kind of, at least goal for us to see how we can visualize when whatever envisioning that we are doing towards 2030. SDG goals are 2030, I think they have kept. So it doesn't look like we are anywhere closer to that. But at least 36 SDG can be a good parameter for us to even see the whether if we are envisioning something, whether we are moving in that direction or not. So sustainability hence becomes a important component of this envisioning process. So how what we are trying to do is that at least we are trying to be, at least to be politically correct, that we are historically informed while looking at these resources. So historically informed, one can go back to like Raj Babu was doing to the early colonial, pre-colonial period also, but we are restricting ourselves to the post-independent India. Mostly 1936 onwards, we can say, because that is where our 100 years visions are there. But largely it is post-independent Odisha, that is where we are looking at. So the first step, what we are trying to do is that we have at least made a statement of what is the status of the different types of resources. Forest, what is the kind of different types of forests that we have, and as you know that we have different category of protections that we have. The protected, demarcated protected forest, reserve forest, to sanctuaries and national parks. And the protection itself creates some kind of exclusion for the community. So it may be good or bad for the ecosystem in certain ways, but how to find a kind of a right kind of balance between ecosystem and the community, that is the kind of status. Similarly, the status around mining, that what are the kind of mineral resources that we have, what is the contribution of it. So this is the kind of status that we are trying to look at. Similarly, on the fisheries, we are making use of this Central Marine Fisher Research Institutes. They do conduct every 5 years a census. 2010 was one, and 2016 was the last that we had. We are trying to look at how many villages are there, how many communities, what is the poverty level, and what is the kind of change that has happened to them. In fact, what was surprising for me is that the Odisha is saying that the poverty has reduced dramatically for overall. Within fishing community, the reduction is just marginal. So, which means there has been, and the attention has not gone, due attention has not gone to that. So, that's 2010 to 16, and coastal areas have been suffering from the different kinds of natural disasters, including cyclones that we have. Cyclone is almost like a everyday activity now. And all kinds of blue economy related development that is happening. In addition to that, there are refugees and others who have settled, and the kind of socio-cultural transition that has happened to that also are. So these are some of the status that we start with, and then what we are trying to do is that we are enlisting some of the movements that has happened in. So there are several numbers of movements that has happened, because movements are in some way reflection of discontent in some ways. So which means either something is not right. So that is where so it could be the community who might have lost out, or it may be the environmentalists who have been fighting against certain things. So it may be a issue with the resource or ecosystem. So there are discontent. So the movement becomes a very interesting point for us to say that what eludes Odisha in some way, that to put that argument together. So we are starting with a number of movements, and some of which are researched, some of which are less researched actually. Say for example, we have Chilika Bachao Andolan. Means if you have to look at coastal, some issues are specific to the resource, particular resource. Some issues are interconnected. So Chilika Bachao Andolan or Baliyapal, the movement that happened against this the what is that missile that yeah. And then on forest, we have the movements like forest and mining, which are kind of interlinked. So the Gandharmadhan movement, or Paplamali in Kasipur, or Niyamgiri movements, and POSCO movement in Jagatsinghpur, which is again a coastal area issues, or the trawlers against Tata trawlers and the state partnership and Gopalpur. And so those movements are kind of a mm, pitching points for us to figure out what are the kind of discontent that has been there, mostly post-independent India, and a lot of these are actually post 1980s. Actually, the time when India is broadly getting into a more on a liberalization, market-based economic system. So we are trying to kind of contextualize these movements as the basis for us, and based on that, we are trying to at least establish that there has been marginalization. Either there is something wrong with the or damage that is happening to the ecosystem, or there has been dispositions for the communities in some way. So either it is a ecological disposition, or it's concluded. Either there is a ecological disposition, or there is a livelihood disposition that is happening. So based on that, we are kind of putting forth our argument, for which we have broadly now put some data together or information together, but it's still a work in progress. Like for example, if I have to say, like share of mining and quarries in GSDP, for example, if you have to say, in Odisha it is 7.28%, whereas all India level it is 2.57%. So the significance of this is pretty high. The amount of protected areas that we have in Odisha, the significance of it much higher compared to many other states, all India averages at least. And the coastal areas particularly, and the small scale fishers who are dependent on this activities are also pretty high. And there are very interesting work, particularly in coastal area. There is one Vasundhara Chotra. She has been working silently. We don't know her, and she couple of papers, very significant papers she has written. One was on the Gahirmata, the Vitarkanika region, where she is talking about the conflict between the local artisanal fishers versus the Bengali refugees who are settled there. And it was in up till 1960s actually. And in that phase, what was happening was our fishers were generally the artisanal fishers who are doing fishing in the shoreline or the coastline within 10 kilometers range of the sea coast. So they were possessive about that space. So they didn't allow the refugees to do fishing in this area. So which essentially pushed these refugees to go to the deep sea fishing. And 1960s around, because the government of India in second five-year plan and others, they saw that fishing is a source, or particularly marine fishery is a source for export earning and revenue. So, and that is the kind of transition that was happening. And what happened with this process is that these people, though they are forced into deep sea fishing, they become kind of important source of export earners. And in few years time, within a decade's time, the economic conditions of both transited, and the locals were economically more marginalized and the refugees were more dominant in that sense. And also that also reflected in the political mobilization and dominance, credit, informal credit market and other things. And how it has created some kind of a dissonance or disconnect is something that Chotrai has quite a fascinating work she has done. Similar work she has done, that how the cyclone has been taken as a opportunity for the capitalist investment, because the mangroves are lost, because the forest in the coastal areas are lost, or the land body that is, it is not suitable for the regular agrarian activities or paddy cultivation. This they have taken as an opportunity for intensive aquaculture activities and shrimp farming, particularly the which happens in the saline water, which is closer to either river mouth or the sea. It has been a very important source of revenue for the government. And in fact, the government of India's blue economy model, that if you see, this is one important part of it. With the venomized shrimp, I mean, the Godavari Delta has been the kind of hub of it, but it is spreading all over. Here, Falcon is there and other companies who have been trying to put this. And in fact, they have put a fish meal company here, because the shrimp eats fish. The marine small fishes are coming to fish meal companies, going to shrimp feed, and then shrimp is getting exported. And these small fishes were essentially the fish which are affordable and was providing us nutrition, or has been providing us nutrition. So food to feed transformation that is happening. And with this, in the pretext of cyclone, what has been happening is that this capital is now coming into this to say that this land is useless, we will make it more productive for aquaculture, shrimp farming purpose. India's current export earning is $50 billion from shrimp. And so this is one of the blue economy model that we are seeing. So these are the kind of context, how these conflicts are manifested and how the capital inroad happens. These are the context that we will be taking to position that how it is happening in the case of forestry, how it is happening mining, and
Thank you.
so that is what is the and at the end we'll kind of give some hopes in with the cases like, say, we have community forest right act, like in the forest case, fish, the Odisha is the first state which is providing small fishes through ICDS program. It experimented in Marvanch in Kaptipada block, but now they have made it universal. So all ICDS program, one day of the week, they will be providing small fish. So we're trying to see how it can be linked so that small scale fishes get the fish, and the women groups process it as a drying and salting, and it goes to this. So at least we'll put some of these hopes together, so that makes it a vision actually.
Okay.
So that is the broad idea of this paper.
Thanks, Amrita. So, any observations to be made by on this?
So are you not talking about the minerals?
Minerals.
Yeah, mining,
Mining,
forestry,
and
so three.
Yeah. This is my area, so I spoke little more.
How do you like factor in this stage now? Because if I remember the statistics correctly, this happened to be the second largest state who had rejected the pattas under FRA. When it was the issue in 2008 when Supreme Court had given the verdict of has given the ultimatum actually to leave the land.
Yeah.
And Odisha happened to be the second largest state who had rejected the patta. One. So in terms of forest management, the so to say sloganeering of the government is like you do whatever you do in the forest, but I will manage. So in a way, that has dispossessed the people who are like forest dwellers and all these things. And as we know from different studies that especially in the scheduled areas, forest plays a vital role. So what is there or what is there as a reason for this part? And this mining aquaculture as well. So these are also like site of contestation. So when you're talking about political ecology, how would you like factor in the state, role of the state here? Because so far state has been really equal. I mean, to put it very bluntly. So how do you see that, and how would you like, what kind of suggestion would you like to give the state, actors?
It's very interesting question actually. How? I'm not exactly sure that how we will be able to push that, but state interest is imminent in all these three resources, and the kind of transition that is taking place. State interest is the pretty much primary, and what has been the state interest, that is what we at least will try to elicit through the process, that the state interest is to actually well-being of the resources or people, or it has been the capital and the investment, that is what they are looking at. So some of the data and facts obviously will tell that. For example, in marine fisheries cases, they have been talking about say cage culture, for example, and it's happening also in the reservoirs. That so cage in a way is a process of privatization, creating private space in the commons. So what kind of conflict it would have the local community who have been using that particular fishing ground for fishing? So state promoting cage culture. So we have to be critical about it, that what kind of conflicts it may lead to if this happens. Similarly, with the forest rights, there have been these two basically you would have been seeing, that individual forest rights and community forest right. And what is the kind of proportion that has been going, and where, what type of it is. And community forest rights has a different connotation, right? So where uh, the kind of a feudal role of the forest department on the community has been little lesser compared to when it comes to individual forest right, where the forest department continues to be the feudal lord and gives these individual pattas in some ways, right? So we are trying to see, at least we will get some cases, and my brother being at least active in this, we know some of these cases in Kalahandi, other places, even in this area. So we'll at least try to figure out one or two cases, like organizations like Vasundhara and others who would have done some of this work, and we'll pick some of this to at least juxtapose it. Means not everything can be written, but I'm sure our position is clear that we want to be critical about what state has been doing. So
Thank you. Yes.
Just, I mean, a related point. I'm sure you know this, but it's a question of emphasis so far as the future perspective. Now, there are numerous examples of collective property rights working well, even within a broadly capitalist system, simply because it's undercuts, and there are various kinds of examples within it. So, simply because it cuts into the larger narrative of market knows best, these are seen or even when presented or acknowledged are given as a shape of as an exceptional counterpoint to the dominant narrative. I believe that, I mean, since you have done such a mapped such a large number of uh, conflicts and changes in property rights, probably you might
to
at the end while wrapping up,
Yes,
might
yes.
point to the various forms of, I'm
Yeah.
not homogenizing that, various forms of
Collective
collective
property
property
rights.
rights that can work
Okay, so
Yeah, please.
good morning. So my chapter is fiscal policy for sustainable development, and with me, Dr. Jugal Mahapatra is also there. Uh, so in this chapter, what I have done is I have taken the data from 1936. We have reviewed the budget of Odisha from 1936 till date. Thanks to my students. Amit, Sasmita, and Khulona for compiling this data through their assignment. Okay, so if you look, okay, so what I have done is I have looked at like the major heads of expenditure from 1936 till date, and we'll be focusing more on the recent the policy decisions and how that is going to impact the long-term growth and all that. So, if you look at the 1936 budget, it was only 1.77 crore, and but we have reached now 2 lakh crore budget. And just to put it like the size of the budget, the major years I have put 1936-37 1.77 crore, and
Constant terms or
no, in the current price, because usually budget numbers are never used adjusted for the inflation. So then 37-38 1.87 crore, and 47-48 independence year, so 9.57 crore, 48-49 11.26, and in 1955-56 we find a major jump in the budgetary allocation, and primarily because of the industrial projects that we had taken. And again, another major jump happens in 1976-77. If you look at the annual growth rate in the budgets, and in fact, you can also link it to the previous graph. See, up to you can say 1998, you see, almost it is linear and it is not growing. But after that, you see exponential growth in the budgetary allocation, and that would also be like you can try to understand what would be the reason, how the revenue sources have increased in the state, and probably largely driven by the mining industry, and manufacturing also industry has gone up, or we can say more formalization of the Odisha economy, which has contributed more to the revenue, and also there has been a lot of transfer from the state. That I will also be explaining. And then 1990, 1999, 2000, and the recent year. So for 2020 to 23, the budget was 2 lakh crore, and previous was 1 lakh 70,000 crore. So the major focus of budget in early years, like in fact, fraud control was a major thing, okay, initial years, and then deficit. Like now we are showing concern. The deficit has been a concern from the very beginning. It's not that now only we are seeing. In fact, I had earlier a notion that we had probably surplus for a long time. It was not the case. Uh, for a long time we had also a lot of deficits, and then initially like managing the water of Mahanadi and provision of education, and small things like salt industry, cooperative movements, cottage industry, eradication of leprosy, malaria, all these things got importance. And we are also trying to create skill for the Second World War, and then unification of primary education, and provision of food storage, establishment of high court, and and then unemployment issues also have come up gradually. And then after independence, we are thinking about food storage facilities, and by 1953 we got the first legislative assembly through the voting system. And then comes this 55-56, where I told that the major budgetary allocation increases. We see that, and that was basically due to the Rourkela steel plant and Paradip port. And uh, then we see that in 1950s there was a huge capital expenditure. If you see the total expenditure, like, and divide into revenue and capital expenditure, in fact, the amount is almost equal: 50% revenue expenditure and 50% capital expenditure. Now we are talking about, like, if you see the capital expenditure amount, if it is like 3% of the state GSDP, and 17% would be on the revenue expenditure. So capital expenditure has declined substantially. But in 50s and 60s, the capital expenditure contribution was really, high. And but you see that, the share, falls drastically from, 70s and late 60s. And the reason again could be that probably the state, started, recruiting more people. And in fact, that is also the time when we started, criticizing the public sector enterprises, because a lot of employments happen through public sector enterprises. Or no, in public finance theories, we say that the politicians started, using those PSUs to fulfill their political objectives, through the PSUs. So that's, and that's how the disguised unemployment, happens. And that is also the time when the PSUs, started making losses, from 70s, 80s. They started also making losses. But uh, initially, when, if you see the 50s and 60s, when a lot of capital expenditure was happening, that was also very much linked to the growth rates. 50s, 60s, if you look at all, like, per capita income of Odisha, per capita consumption expenditure of Odisha, and compare it to the national average, we are matching with the national average. And the fall starts in 70s and 80s, and it continues up to 90s. Now, till we can say the present chief minister comes. Okay, things have, really improved in almost in all indicators, from early 2000. So 70s, 80s, and 90s were like the fall, and that is very much linked to the capital expenditure, and a lot of revenue expenditure happening. So slowdown in the growth rates. And then 76, 77, also again, there is a rise in the expenditure. And the reasons are, priority was given to the education sector, mass investment program, and including Odisha Small Industries Corporation, Handloom Development Corporation, bird sanctuary, and focus on agriculture. And there are a lot of other legislations that were adopted. Then I'm using, like, I'm coming straight to 90s. Okay, and 90s, the fiscal situations, for the state started really deteriorating. And it was, like, really bad when we implemented the fifth pay commission recommendation. And for your information, you might be all aware that this was not only the situation of Odisha. If you look at the entire country, all states were running into, fiscal problem. And that is why in 1992, at National Development Council also this was discussed, that why all states are getting into the fiscal, like, say, lot of deficits. So we should do something to control these deficits. And NDC appointed a committee to basically correct the path of all the states and national government. And this committee was chaired by our Biju Patnaik. Okay? And this committee had recommended a lot of measures, okay, to the National Development Council. But since there is no carrot and stick policy, no states really listen to them, except a few things like the disinvestment process, started from the mid 90s. And that was also one of the recommendation of this committee, headed by Biju Patnaik. And but then other things like, there, of course, this compulsory retirement, voluntary retirement, all these schemes were recommended by this committee. So some states really implemented all those policies, but states did not really take it very seriously. And then comes 11th Finance Commission. And 11th Finance Commission basically raised concern over all the deficits by all states, including Odisha. And then Finance Commission recommended to Government of India that you have to come up with a legislation to limit the expenditure. And then the Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Act comes in 2002 and 3. And FRPM had carrot and stick policy, that if you comply, you are rewarded. If you don't comply, you will lose a lot of money. And that's how all states, including poorest states like Odisha, Bihar, Chhattisgarh, all, in fact, the poorest states were the first to comply with the FRPM target. And Odisha brings legislation in 2005. and in the next year we are surplus. Okay, just within 1 year. Target was given by 2008. You should achieve the targets, but they did not even wait till 2008. By 2005 and 6, we are already a surplus state in revenue terms. And how we all have achieved that, we all are aware that government simply put a like government freezed all the recruitment, and wherever there was recruitment like service division paid only 1,500 rupees salary, and then sanctioned positions were really cut down, and the capital expenditures were also brought down drastically. So that's how the new fiscal era emerges, and so here you can see now the share of own revenue and share of own tax revenue. So it is own tax share of own revenue in the total revenue of the state is 46%. Here we should also make a comparison between like the so-called special category states and the general category states. Usually, of course, now there is no such distinction. Although our chief minister, tries to sometimes, like before the people that we are demanding the government of India to get a special category state. But we should know that now the distinction doesn't exist, between the general category and special category states. But whenever the concept existed, we always observed that the special category states were more dependent on the central government for the revenue. So own revenue of those states should be quite low. But if you observe the Odisha situation, we are also not like we should have been comparable to the general category states, where around 60% of the revenue is coming from the state and 40% comes from the center. For the special category states, usually like 70% would come from the center, 30% or even less than that. Probably some states would have only 10% own revenue. Because like states like all northeastern states, they don't have any industry. Even agriculture also is like very little. So unless you have a formalized economy, you don't get tax revenue. But the general category state and even Odisha also, you see that our share is not increasing. Own revenue is not increasing. That is a definitely a matter of serious concern. And even though we have mineral revenues, which has really grown substantially in last few years, our own revenue is not really sufficient. And in the recent years, the transfer from center has been really quite high. So this is actually transfer from the center. You see the graph. So it has gone up significantly. And on these numbers also, again, you might be following the debates. Navin Patnaik always tells, Kendra Vaimatruka Manobhava. And the ruling party is saying that, we have been giving more funds. Uh, Both are correct. How can both be correct? If you see the absolute number, then it is showing increasing path. Uh, but uh, but Chief Minister is also correct in the sense that in terms of the percentage share in the divisible pool, Odisha's number has gone down. Okay, so absolute number is increasing. That can be used by the BJP, and BJD uses the percentage in the divisible pool of the nation, and that has gone down. Uh, so center doesn't have any, or say the finance commission is the organization that actually gives this formula, and finance commission is not a political entity. So why the numbers have gone down? Because of the choice of the indicators that the finance commission has chosen, and in all these indicators, particularly say demographic performance or the population, sir has already yesterday pointed out that our population is already declining, right? Particularly, the population growth rate, if you see, our population is already declining. We although talk about only South Indian states like Kerala, Tamil Nadu, but in fact, they were the states who did lot of hangama during the 15th Finance Commission terms of reference. Odisha really did not make any drama on all these things, but there are 11 such states that have already witnessed a fall in the population. Okay? Yeah. So all these states have got a less share in the divisible pool. So and the recent finance commissions are using to 2011 population. Remember, the previous finance commissions used 1971 population. So since we are using 2011 population and Odisha people are not producing more children anymore, so Navin Patnaik is getting less money. So Navin, yes, yeah, he also did not contribute. So that's why he's getting less. Anyway, so the point is that now the central transfer in absolute terms has really increased, and our own revenue has not really increased substantially. And so these are total revenue receipts and transfer from center and all these different sources. Then coming to the total expenditure, here is the total expenditure as percentage of GSTP and total revenue receipts. So it shows basically the deficit amount. So you can see that from 92 to say 2000, early 2000, there is a huge gap. That means your expenditure is much higher than the revenue. The orange line is expenditure and the blue line is the revenue. So here huge deficit, and then there's a convergence. You see, that in fact we had surplus in a few years, and this is total expenditure I'm telling, including the capital expenditure and the revenue expenditure. So the state maintained fiscal surplus in a few years, which is a very bad thing, okay, for a poor state like Odisha. And in the recent years, again, the total expenditure is exceeding the total revenue, and it is primarily because of rise in the capital expenditure, which is a good thing. And this is also having impact on our growth rates. If you see the growth rates from 2003-4, Odisha's average growth rate has been faster than the national average, and that's why I have been telling that no, Odisha is a middle income state now. Although we don't know who is benefiting from this growth. Okay, okay, so uh, capital expenditure has gone up, but the revenue expenditure of the state is still low, and there are a lot of vacancies. In fact, as per the FRBM legislation, government should publish the document, particularly how many vacancies are there. Although government has taken a lot of initiative and is coming up with new documents like green budget, child budget and nutrition budget and so on, government has stopped publishing this data, number of vacancies. So no, government may claim that no, we are a transparent government and all that, but in last 2 or 3 budgets, they are not publishing the number of vacancies anymore because they realize that people are using these numbers to create problem. So they stopped all these things. Okay? And so then, yeah, these are the deficit indicators. You can see that up to early 2000s, so no, all in negative quadrants, and after that, you see all in positive. Like capital outlay has increased to 4.3, and the revenue deficit in positive. Mean it is basically revenue surplus, and this has been sometimes even more than 2 or 3 percentage, revenue surplus. And you'll be surprised to know that during COVID-19, Odisha maintained huge amount of revenue surplus. Okay, who is probably we thought that states will all get into like bankruptcy and there will be a lot of deficit, but states maintain huge amount of revenue surplus. And I tell this in class, and here also we should say that. So when our people were suffering, okay, and they did not get food to eat, they died on the roads, on the railway tracks, but the states were happy to maintain revenue surplus and not do anything, you can say. uh, we understand that capital expenditure cannot be done because there are a lot of bottlenecks, but uh, in providing support social security to public, and when you have money, the government should have done that, but government has not done it. Coming to the debt stock, it has again gone down drastically, and in public media here in Odisha, we hear that Odisha may get into again no debt trap. I don't think that we are anywhere near to actually that kind of situation. The reasons are many. One is that we are still much below the target that is given by the finance commission, that 25 percentage of the state GSDP you can borrow actually up to that much. So ours is still below 20 percentage. So that means we can still borrow. And the cost of borrowing for Odisha is also quite low. Why? We have lot of extra budgetary resources like district mineral fund, Tampa, CAMPA is basically compensatory afforestation and management forest compensatory afforestation management planning authority. If you divert the forest, then you have to pay money, and that goes to the CAMPA fund. And government of Odisha uses all these funds to borrow. Whenever there is a need for borrowing, instead of going to RBI or to market, it is borrowing from these sources. So the cost of borrowing is also remaining quite low. So when the state has such favorable conditions for everything, that you are borrowing quite a low and your cost of borrowing is also low, government is not in a mood to spend. Okay? And this yesterday or day before yesterday, too, some report has come. Some media people are also asking me like Odisha's performance in the governance and in social sector is the worst in the country, but its performance in the fiscal performance is the best in the country. So look at these two things contradictory. In fiscal performance, we are the best in the country, but in social sector and in governance, we are the worst. So how do you explain this? So I was just explaining the media friends that see, a poor state maintaining revenue surplus, is like making bakri. If a poor person tells that I am putting in lot, I have lot of bank balance, then people will laugh at the poor person that you are not eating and you are saying that I have bank balance. So Navin Patnaik is just doing that. Okay? Our people are remaining hungry, malnutrition, uneducated. Teachers are not there in the schools. There are no doctors in the hospitals, but there is a lot of revenue surplus. And we don't when there are no officials including the chief secretary, sorry, including secretaries, one secretary manages 2 or 3 departments, that. So how will they get time to spend the money in their ministries or in their departments? So that's why our governance has been quite usually poor in the state. Okay, because a lot of vacancies are there. And very interestingly, the revenue generating departments also are having huge number of vacancies. So that's why governance is actually is coming at the bottom. And social sector also, health and education, we see that we are leaving it to the private sector, and that will have long term issues like quality of education will be compromised, and then poor people can have access to the quality education. But to just pacify the rural elites, government is coming up with new innovative policies. Like earlier we had Navodaya Vidyalayas, Kendra Vidyalayas, so poor people, rural elite people can send their kids to them, so they are always pacified. And now the number of elites have gone up in the rural areas. Now we have come up with other Vidyalayas. So elites can send their kids to these English medium schools, and poor people remains like that only. They let them suffer. So that way, our social sector and governance, has been really bad. One more good thing that has happened is after implementation of GST, our revenue collections have been really better. In fact, during COVID-19 and after COVID also, and now also, the GST collection has been the growth rates of GST for Odisha is probably one of the highest. So many economists are trying to understand what is the reason behind it. Why Odisha is getting so much of GST, and the reason is nothing else. It is only mining industry. Okay, and you might be already aware that last year government had mobilized 50,000 crore revenue only from mining. Our total budget was 2 lakh crore. 25% came directly from the mining industry, and government could not touch spend the money, so it has made a fixed deposit in the RBI. Of course, we have given a different name to it, and is it prudent fiscal policy? We have to think. When the state people are not getting quality, public services, and the state, says that we are fiscal prudent and we have a lot of deposits in the Reserve Bank, then we have to really be worried about it. So, in conclusion, yeah, the initial years of Odisha, if you see from 1936 through 50s, we had actually huge amount of capital expenditure that probably had led to high economic growth rate of Odisha. In fact, when I was writing a paper, I was trying to do the structural break analysis, of growth for Odisha. You find two, break points. One is in 2003, which is statistically significant, and another is 55, 56. Okay, so that Hirakud Dam and Raurkela steel plant. Since a lot of capital investment happened, you see there was a huge jump in the growth rate. So two breakpoints we can always test for, and those are statistically significant also. So, but then 70s, 80s, and 90s are probably the worst time, for Odisha's growth, and these are very much linked to the fiscal policies. And the decline starts from 70s and 90s, and then recently we have taken up a lot of populist schemes, and huge amount of GST collection we are observing, and that is coming from the mining industry, and but large number of vacancies which will have significant implications on the distributional aspects and the long term growth for the Odisha. So with this I conclude. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So,
It's a very detailed. Thank you, dear. Uh, I'm still not very sure, like, is it a good idea to take the current prices? Meaning, there may be a justification, I would like to know that. So even if we are doing that, wouldn't it be get to show the growth rates rather than the actual values? Or to show that as proportion of something.
Yes, yes.
So unless, so otherwise you have to have that nominal will be
comparability.
Yes. So the things you see, exports from a particular sector. So it's right. But the moment you sort of, let's say, take the dollar value of that, might fluctuate. So that is just a small solution. The other thing which somewhere I was very interested because of long period study that I've taken, would it be a good idea to like introduce political regimes in this time actually? Like what exactly was happening like 70s, 80s and 90s, whether because of a certain political dispensation, maybe certain way the federal polity was working, that's why you did not get the capital investment in some of the sectors, particularly sectors which are coming under the central list. Actually, that is the one of the major issues, in fact. Like when you have this three list, the state, center, and concurrent list, so quite a few of the infrastructure, they actually came under the central list. And it is during the 70s, 80s, and the 90s, that was also the time when it was sort of Congress. So you had this challenge because at the state, uh, you always thought that because you are not actually essentially opposing the central political party, you are aligning with them, and so very unlike Odisha, a state like West Bengal, a state like Andhra Pradesh, a state like Tamil Nadu, a state like Karnataka, they could actually manage to divert a lot of capital investment which was coming from the central fund. So I would imagine like if you introduce the political regimes, that might help little more.
I just have some reactions to tell you because of again keeping our document in mind. This is an explicit analysis of the pattern trends and some implication you are talking about. Can we introduce something like a fiscal responsiveness measure? I mean, like just drop me, and we can do that in the sense that what are the evolving changes? I mean, whatever you are telling in story form, evolving changes in the expected welfare that you want for the population. For instance, the population has diversified, the degree of urbanization has changed, people's livelihood patterns have changed. I mean, you can take any kind of thing, and this is from my learning from the Finance Commission. So I told I'm the culprit that Odisha is getting less money. So thing is, if you can create a responsiveness index, why I'm talking is that in economic principle, whatever we go against or not, it's more important to say that whether there is a responsiveness. You mentioned about education, you mentioned about health sector. There is also an emerging criteria of need. I mean, it has changed over time. Has there been a fiscal response? If we can do that, we can say, I mean, we can justify our argument into saying that there has been surplus. These are all content-based remarks which you made, like they have revenue surplus, they have this. But we should say that are they still, even if what they are they doing a responsive job or not? And to what extent are they failing in this responsiveness? If we can do something innovative, you can do that. So
Yeah.
that's why I'm telling you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One point, then if you look at this, the new perspective that has come to modern money, they take an accounting approach to this. So it's state is in surplus means people are in deficit. So that is a kind of so would you like to get some kind of a data or information? I don't know how the household savings and household debt. So if these two aspects, if you can kind of put it together along with this transition, are you seeing that the claim that you are making, whether the data is also kind of also supporting that idea? You're saying that the state is not kind of spending enough, and what is happening to the household savings and debts?
I have one quick remarks. I mean, can we do it more disaggregated with the budget number? Because that will be really interesting to see. For example, this Educa civil rights supply was implemented by I think 70, I guess. I don't know what exactly happening with those numbers. Whether that money is really going to them or not, but given to these heads, whether it is going to that or not, and whatever the commitments on part of the government, whether that is happening or not. So this is one thing. And second thing, I would also like to, because this is like something that is in debate with regard to the GST. What people are talking about is undivisible pool of resources in terms of size and all these things. The governments are like flying over it. In our government, central government, come up with this size, which is invisible, and the entire share goes to them. Now the state does not have any very tax resources. So how can we raise that as well? Because when we are thinking about it, and last political question that most of the non-GDP states are doing, since you said that we have revenue surplus, can we think about rolling back to the old pricing system to benefit young people like
No,
Yeah.
that is not put that.
So I'm just
Yeah, they
we have
are.
revenue surplus. The states does not have revenue surplus. Now they are going back to the old system, Rajasthan and some of the states already have done it. So can Odisha also thinking about, because it could be a political mileage for the government, the election thing. Boom.
In fact, on pension, I have a very different stand. My stand is that now the state should provide pension for all, including farmers, to government employees. And government employees should not have that 50% of the salary as pension. They should have 1/3 of the salary as the pension. And farmers should not have 500 rupees pension. It should be minimum 5,000 rupees in the present price. So I have so pension should be universalized actually. Because we make very offensive statements for the farmers, or so when they get rice, people make very derogatory remarks, right? So that way, and still there has been a lot of demands also. If you look at like say whether it's Anganwadi workers or ASA workers, so why actually you fulfill demand in different ways? So rather you universalize. So I think very good suggestions have come. For your consumption expenditure, in fact, there are data. I have already looked at it. The Odisha situation in terms of consumption expenditure compared to the national level, we have really gone down actually. So I will put those data
And
also.
household savings?
Savings I have not analyzed. I will check. So I will stop here. And I think other things, these are very good suggestions. So I will take care of those things. Okay. Yes.
Population figures have been changed from 71 to 2011.
Amarendra will manage now. He can manage many things.
Sir,
No, no, I was just wondering this. So this 1971 population base used to be the major advantage
Yes.
for like states like UP.
yes, basically the Hindi belt.
Hindi belt.
Yes,
So now that has been changed. Is it?
yeah, that hasn't changed.
Yes,
So
yes.
now that's why they are getting more.
They say deliberately got done.
No, no, it's not. In fact, it is required. It is required. See, for example, they have huge population. Should we not provide them public goods? So if they have more people, means they need more public goods. So we should give them. That is just good enough.
Justification.
Justification.
But those who have controlled population,
Hmm.
they are victimized.
Who can?
That you are telling old story. Don't tell that.
No, again, my argument is that can any state government tell that I have done this thing so that population has gone down? Tell me, which state has done anything? Nothing. It is education that has.
And development.
Yes, education is the best contraceptive. Okay, so through education things have happened. So let other people get educated. Population will be automatically controlled.
Taking care of development.
So when the states claim that we have reduced the population, that is actually a false claim they make.
Next ବୁଝିବା।
That's what I'm doing. I'm downloading the
ସେଇଟା
PPT.
ତମରି?
No. Okay. So then let us break for tea and come back.
ମାନେ ଏଇଟା ବାହାରି ପରେ
The Odisha Economic Association have positive. They are not able to tell us.
No, this is not Odisha Economic Association.
ନା ପଜିଟିଭ ସରପ୍ଲସ୍
ଆରେ କିଏ କଣ ସେଇଥିପାଇଁ ବ୍ରେକ୍ କରିବ?
କିଛି
ନା, ନା।
ସରପ୍ଲସ୍ ନାହିଁ କିଛି ସରପ୍ଲସ୍ ନାହିଁ
Treasurer is there. See, you ask.
Treasurer is there. Hey, you keep this way, you know.
Boarding pass. Again.
ବରା ଇଡଲି
Boarding pass.
ସେଇ ତମରି ସଂସ୍ଥା ବିଜେଡି ପାଇପ୍ଲାଇନ୍ କଣ
सुखदेव सर किछ कहउछन्ती कि
ନାଇଁ
ओके सर ठीक है
आई एम लिसनिंग ओके
ओके सर ठीक है सर थैंक यू सर थैंक यू
ନମସ୍କାର
नमस्कार
Very nice meeting you actually.
So, so we'll start the next session, the morning session. Both the presentations were, in fact, the three presentations were very, very detailed, interesting, and on very diverse themes actually. And I think all did a great job. So I'm also looking forward to Professor Deepak Misra. So he, about maybe because of the time thing, about 15 minutes or something.
Good afternoon, friends. Well, this is definitely a work in progress, and then, but Amalendu said that his work was also a work on progress, so the bar is already high. Anyway, this chapter talks about regional disparities and uneven development in Odisha, and because this is a question which you can't really escape. Whatever we are talking, whenever we are talking about a vision for Odisha's future. Now, what we have done in this, or we are probably going to do this in this chapter, are the following. The first question is to map the trajectory of development from a regional perspective. So, taking into account the complex history of Odisha, some of which we have been discussing since yesterday, the role of geography in shaping these divergent trajectories of development in Odisha, and to provide some evidence of regional unevenness, we plan to present a series of maps and tables based on composite indices of development across various periods of time. We intended to go beyond the district level. So far, we have not been able to find out all the information data that we want to have for that exercise, but definitely at the inter-district level over a period of time, we will try to map the trajectories of regional development. But this explaining this regional trajectories of development is a major challenge, and that we can move from various theoretical standpoints, but we choose to basically look at the political economy of regional development as the window through which we want to analyze the factors behind such kind of a pattern which we see. Finally, we will also talk about what could be the way forward, what could be the kind of development policy that can address at least some of the questions that are raised by concerns around uneven development. This map, which is a very simple map, the first one is share of scheduled caste population in Odisha at the district level, second one scheduled tribe population, and the third one is a combined share of scheduled caste and scheduled tribes. Now, this simple map, I'll take the last map, and if I put it next to the last poverty estimates that we have from NSS consumption employment rounds. So if we put that, then these two maps almost look similar. And there is a story in that. I mean, that story is actually the story of development or underdevelopment of Odisha. We all, I think, have been talking about it, so I will not spend much time on it, except to highlight that even though Odisha is a state, and there is some logic as to why we should understand the state by looking at the state level figures, the regional concentration and the social concentration of poverty tells a story that is at least markedly different from the story that is being told at least at the level of political discourse, in the mainstream political discourse in Odisha and elsewhere. The story is poverty is an economic process of deprivation. The process of economic development as such is moving forward. There are some unfortunate people, regions, communities which are simply not part of it. And if we can find out a mechanism to just include them, the problem will be solved. In Odia, you will listen many a times a kind of articulation where Gorivar Jati nahi. So, but this one graph, I think all of you know this graph. This has been presented in a number of papers. Tells that it matters a lot as to where you are located in Odisha in terms of how you are placed in a regime of poverty reduction. There is a, I mean, at least if we take a consistent, uh, definition of how poverty is being calculated, official poverty is being calculated, then also you find that this was a regime of poverty reduction, and yet there were sub periods in which scheduled tribes in southern region, for example, NSS region, there was an increase in the share of poverty. The share of poverty, even when it was going down, it is getting concentrated in few areas and in among few communities. So that is a concern that remains valid. Now, the best way, I'll talk about I will not talk much about the theoretical framework, but I'll speak some of these things. But the main question is, either you explain it, I mean, sometimes we do that in terms of changes in geography, or differences in terms of primary geography. Sometimes we take note of the historical factors behind it. Sometimes we have outrightly blame the victims, that there must be something wrong with them, why they are not able to participate in this process of development. But so far, I think the analysis suggests that it is state intervention and access to state power. That is why poverty is never simply an economic question. It's by and large a political question. It's about state intervention of different kinds, which has shaped the trajectory of development, differing trajectories of development within Odisha. But let me just state this clearly, that when I'm talking only about Odisha because the story is about Odisha. But this uneven development itself is not an Odisha specific phenomena, or not even an India specific phenomena. This is the character of development. This is not happening despite development. It's not happening that there are positives and negatives, and somehow regional backwardness and uneven development is among the negative factors. No, it is the character of development itself. So from that perspective, if we wanted to look at how state intervention was different in these regions, unfortunately, we do not have enough data to claim or to substantiate that particular argument. So the next best thing is to look at different components of development, different components of outcomes of development, state intervention in development, and then see if there is a story. So this presentation stops at 2011-12 largely, but we are trying to extend the analysis. We have constructed a number of development indices, physical infrastructure, financial infrastructure, and agricultural development, so on and so forth. We will construct more indices as well. But the remarkable story is not only a systematic divergence between what is happening in coastal Odisha and in other parts of Odisha. That story we all know. But the remarkable thing is its persistence over time. That despite many changes at the aggregate level, at the average level, we see that there is a persistence of the pattern of this difference. So the question is not how exactly or to what extent exactly North Odisha as NSS regions or Southern Odisha as NSS region are backward. The question really is why this gap is not being bridged in a faster way, in a faster manner, when the overall claim is that of remarkable success as of the state. So we have done also the exercise to look at, but at the same time, this is not a static story. It's not a static story because of various reasons. For example, we just now had a presentation which highlighted that 55 was one of the remarkable breaks, in the sense that state intervention in the form of Hirakud Dam and Rourkela steel plant, both of which occurred in a relatively uneven region. So it is not a simple story of some unfortunate regions lagging behind. It is, I am afraid, not a story as well of an universal neglect of state intervention, but the story is also about the nature of state intervention. And there are changes as well. We have seen, for example, the changing fortune of different districts across different parameters. There are some surprises. Emergence of Jharsuguda is, for example, over the past few decades, the emergence of Jharsuguda as a relatively richer district. The positives are, if you may call that, are more if we look at an indicator like per capita income, right, which doesn't take into account the distributive patterns, or infrastructure index, which also doesn't talk about the social connect. But even within that, you will see that something like agricultural development, Kalahandi and Navarangpur comes out in 2007. Although I have my suspicion about this data, I will request our young friends to cross check as to how come these two districts become so high within a short period of time in terms of fertilizer consumption and agriculture paddy productivity. If that is real, that's a remarkable story. I mean, what is happening, at least in terms of the broad picture. Similarly, we have physical infrastructure index, financial infrastructure index, so on and so forth. In all this, I mean, I'll summarize by saying that the overall pattern doesn't change. The overall pattern of relative neglect of interior Odisha broadly vis-a-vis coastal Odisha doesn't change. But also, if you look at specific indicators and specific patterns of changes, there are some deviations, but persistence of the overall pattern. Now, look in terms of explaining this or understanding this chapter cannot really. This is a project that's for all of us to take as to how come a state which is run on democratic principles continuously for such a long period, in fact, accepts such social and regional concentration of poverty and underdevelopment. That's a bigger project. But to highlight a few things, of course, the role of geography is there. Differences in land productivity, the kind of terrain that we have, different kinds of vulnerabilities associated with hilly and mountainous areas, those are there. Historical development, we are listening to Professor Jatin Naik, for example, who said that the merger of these princely states complicated the picture. I would say that it didn't complicate it enough for the polity to be responsive to that complication, right? But that historical development, and not also, that's the point. I think the fiscal story also had this story, that in the early years of independence, Odisha's political regimes were highly unstable. The number of chief ministers that we had probably would be a national record. No chief minister continued till about 1980s, when there is relative stability. But the regional political economy story of that was that different formations were consistently coming to power in interior Odisha and coastal Odisha. So various kinds of permutation combinations were and political calculations were made, compromises were made with the political powers from both these regions, made by and with both the regions. But the story is, it was a political formation which cannot be just said as the representative of one particular class, although the feudal class from Western Odisha and Southern Odisha had the major share. We also had these characteristics. We have to characterize these ruling elites in terms of their caste location, caste and tribe location, in terms of their regional location and their class location. These three things tells us a complicated story where we see that the bargaining among the elites of both these areas excluded the interests of the poor from both these areas. So it's not just a simple story of one regional elite, trying to collaborate or contest the dominance of another regional elite. It is much more complicated elite. It's a much more complicated story of who these elites are. Language, yes, I'll continue. I'll finish in 3 minutes. The remarkable thing about the agrarian structure and political power in Western Odisha was that there was a continuity post-independence. Not only that the forces of national freedom struggle were weak there, but also the continuation of that feudal, semi-feudal structure within agriculture in terms of political power sets the story that as to why in the initial years we did not see a remarkable change in terms of that. The reason is, politically, this is a very volatile question. You go to Western Odisha, you go to Southern Odisha, this is one of the first things you will hear in political articulation. But when it comes to public policy making, this popular resentment did not translate into a remarkable change in terms of prioritization. Neoliberal development has created another dimension of that. Because of its, we have been discussing that extractivism as a dominant state policy, extractivism and with some kind of populist transport. So that has not been able to, break this pattern, because the differences within the regions, within the less developed regions, I'm saying, it gets aggravated by this development policy. For example, the scheduled tribe and the scheduled caste within northern Odisha, NSS region, broadly in popular parlance, Western Odisha, their voice doesn't get included in the official discourse of development, because this is seen as development is seen as something which requires private investment and capital investment, but it's also not articulated systematically, at least from among the voices of discontent which occasionally you will hear from these regions. We have been talking about poverty, we have been talking about poverty reduction, but there is a systematic process of poverty creation of new kind of poverty. A point which I'm not going into detail is that poverty regimes are also very different in Odisha. And that point, keeping that in mind, I think the new forms of poverty that has been created primarily through neoliberal development of certain kind, where poverty remains masked behind better roads, better infrastructure, better bridges. If you look at the infrastructure, probably you might think that things are changing. If you look at only per capita income, you might think that these rigid blocks are finally melting. There is development in Anugul. There is some development happening in Jharsuguda, probably Navrangpur now agricultural development, Kalahandi agricultural development. But if you look at the overall character of it, you will see that the marginalized from this region are not even participant, or at least not benefiting substantially from this development process. So what is the way ahead? I'll just highlight one thing. We plan to have a discussion on the kind of development policy that has been done. The real thing is whether when the state becomes more responsive for the marginalized groups or the less or the poor in general, poorer regions or the poor in the poorer regions will benefit, are likely to benefit automatically. So if there is universal program which takes care of poor from the welfare perspective, then this kind of regional concentration, this kind of social concentration can be taken care of to some extent. On the other hand, there are also region-specific interventions which has happened. I will say that universalization of PDS in the southern and northern regions, that can be one kind of an experiment. The KBK Yojana, which was there, which was introduced, that was a kind of regional interventions. We need to see whether these interventions have been enough to reach to the marginalized and the poor sections within within these less developed regions. So regional lens may be a starting point, but unless we integrate it with a class analysis of what is happening within the regions, unless we integrate it with with the analysis of the caste character of the elites, I don't think we are going to achieve much by simply having region-specific programs as well. This is not an argument against decentralization. This is not an argument in favor of, this is not an argument which treats decentralization as a magic key. Rather, what kind of decentralization and what kind of development processes, and to my mind at least, it is politics that holds the key. So politicizing development should be on the agenda in our region for future, rather than thinking it in purely depoliticized terms. I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Deepak Misra, because he's also someone who has been working on this for ages now. Maybe there are some questions or maybe quick comment or questions for him, please.
Fascinating work, and knowing that you have been working in this area, we can visualize what would be the outcome of this work, and it's fascinating. Just thought of a couple of points, because the data constraints, it stops at a particular point of time. There is this, if we have to look at in some way the quality of public services in some indicative way. The mission Antoday database which has come out, and it elicits about 20 to 30 at a village level. So we can even aggregate it to panchayat or even further level, block level also. So that can also perhaps tell a story if you want to add 2021 in that phase. If you want to add, it may strengthen this argument that you are making. The other one, of course, we may be having separate paper on migration itself, but as a fallout of this, the out migration is a challenging data itself. So, but the out migration and nature of migration with this regional connotation, I think will kind of enhance the scope of that which caste class along with caste and class. It will kind of these are just the 2 points. Keep in your mind, but not necessarily that.
No.
I have, it was, somebody was speaking?
No,
Sorry, sorry, please continue.
no, बोलिए, no problem.
Oh, sorry. It was really good presentation. I mean, I benefited a lot. I have certain like observation. One thing is, I find that Odisha case of regional disparity and uneven development is a very curious case. Unlike other states where we see the regiments getting articulated politically, and in a way it has jolted the political establishment of the sector. Be it Telangana kind of scene or lately before that Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand and all these things. But we see a sporadic kind of political articulation coming from the neglected areas, and that actually disappears after some kind of political adjustment, some ticket sharing and stuff like that. So this is really something that that is happening. So one thing that comes when you make this comment, complicated, caste class identity. Whereas historically it has been recorded by people like Manoranjan Mishra, Vishwanath Pati, then I think there are some more scholars that we see that feudalism or the feudal power translated into political power in the immediate post independence regime, and they still continue to sway the political order of that area, our area, particularly Western Odisha and the South Odisha. So I would also like request you, if possible, to do a political class analysis. Because Manoranjan Mahanti had done it until 1990, I guess, if I remember correctly. It was really good paper. Dominance and power structure.
Transcend
That is a really good paper. That is one thing. And coming to the contemporary thing, obviously we know the issues regarding KDA plan and all this. This is currently one of the plan, unprecedented plan in the history of India, not from Odisha per se, which has pumped hell lot of money in KBK region. And James Scott would have argued the policy that was actually aimed to benefit the people would actually end up becoming the counterproductive. And same thing has happened in the case of KBK plants. Basically, it has imagined the development as major technocratic intervention, creating big dams, creating big kind of projects, but it has not actually translated into development. So obviously, there is a need for rethinking, and we also see this Western Odisha Development Council not really working. And Western Odisha Development Council is often being chaired and headed by the people from the coast. That is again a big kind of story that has to also factor in. So I would my hunch is, and something that I have also not done personally, that what is exactly happened to these funds? Can we do a evaluation how this WBC fund has been spent on different heads? Did it create any kind of rosy picture? So it can also factor in these kind of things. I think it would be really interesting. But sorry, just last point, if you allow me. There has been a study, I don't remember the historian's name, but from Delhi School, I know, Delhi University. He had done an analysis of the assembly question. Because when we think that there is a discontent in some area, that gets reflected in the policy area, isn't it? But surprisingly, we don't even see the question coming from that area, articulating their problems. Yeah. So it also shows the kind of apathy that the representatives have for that area, who actually came to present that area. So that is interesting. I mean, we can also look into that.
So I think I agree with the Pankaj. I will broaden that point. Disparity is a part and parcel of development process. But how this disparity of Odisha disparity and other states? So he told one point that demand of the people or that movement. That is what type of other factors are there, which how we are different from other. Then if you recognize that, I think that we can address. Then. Another is this administrative decentralization we have done in 1991, the 13 to 30 district, and again now more district is coming up. So that has any impact on this administration or disparity that type of thing, the decentralization of that administrative powers. Then I think we have a poverty chapter also, and when we are using the word poor or poverty, that should have some operational thing. That when you are using, I think you are taking the poor in the class, poor class, not income poverty. You are telling that income poor, or you are taking the class poorness. So that when you are using that,
Yeah.
I think our chapter, Amarendra, we can make it income poverty. Then I think if we are dealing with that income part, poverty, that part we will put. Because the poor concentration is a now very big one. Sir, boiling down that poorness last point, that how different poorness is coming in the class poorness or education or and last point is just I want to know that how you are making this indexes,
Oh,
that
this is
composite.
simple PCI.
Only adding this
No. Simple.
that human development type of
No. These are not
minimax. Minimax.
No, these are not minimax. These are what is PCI, the principal component. PCA. Sorry.
PCA. Okay.
Yeah. So no. The choice of indicators, the method of aggregation, we will test that for through multiple ways to find out whether, because those results have to be robust. Poverty is very clear. It is I am using income poverty to argue that there is a concentration of poverty. New forms of poverty we don't have studies yet, and this is not likely to be captured by NSS. First of all, there is no NSS round anymore. But even if there is a good NSS round, these are so location specific, the processes. But the other studies which are done on mining and its implications of livelihood, they capture it, the dimension of poverty. I think I'll stop here.
There is this adverse inclusion thing. When the state of Odisha was conceived, actually we were not in picture.
That's true. I mean, I just let me respond to that, to your question on the non-representation of people from less developed region. See, the discontent is one thing. Its articulation is through process so far. I mean, this is a very tentative, and personal thing. I have not consulted my co-authors on this point. That it is probably because that is being led by a particular elite. Even the discontent is being led by a particular elite who are not acceptable to the masses. The inclusion of these states in Odisha, the masses were nowhere in the picture, right? It was the same elites who were in the darbars. They represented. They were instrumental. If you look at the personalities, basically middle class people who but at the same time, even after all these years of discontent, even now those who are articulating this voice, they are also coming from the same group. So I guess there is a reason why this discontent is not being articulated. My fear is this: identity-based articulation often has a tendency to undermine these very questions, and all powers find it very relatively easy, at least if not very easy, relatively easy to accommodate identity-based aspirations vis-a-vis economic and other kinds of aspirations. Stop here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mishra, and excellent discussion. I also, as he is going to sit, I should also remind all of you that he is a great poet. In fact, one of his very recent books, Ratira Kamar Sahib, in fact, that sort of tells a lot about how deeply he has been working and thinking on this process of uneven development. So sometime you must read his poems as well. So we move on to the next one by Aswini Nanda and Shubhabrata Das. I think Aswini is online.
Yes, both are online.
Both are online.
Yes.
Yes. He is present Creed in Chandigarh.
No, he's already there. So you can share your presentation.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes. Good afternoon, everyone, and good afternoon, all the members who are there of Odisha Economic Association and all. It's a pleasure, and I congratulate Odisha Economic Association as well as the organizers, particularly Dr. Das and Dr. Amar and all, for a magnificent meeting and all. And you see, Professor, I have a section on urbanization, and it's quite interesting. But my authority to urbanization is limited in the sense that during my stint in Jawaharlal Nehru University, I used to work for my MPhil urbanization and all. And I'm not working much on Odisha these days, but it's very interesting, challenging to study the subject. And little bit authority that I have for urbanization is that I stay in Chandigarh. You see, most people in Odisha, they always say that Chandigarh and Bhubaneswar, they're planned by same person, which is not really so. It's interesting getting perspective from Chandigarh and looking at the urbanization process in Odisha. And from my side, and my co-author is Professor Shiva Prasad Das, and is in Ravenshaw University. It's a good team of somebody from economics as well as geography and all. We're working together. So I will be speaking on urbanization, and this point has been highlighted very succinctly by previous speakers, that the tremendous limitation we face in assessing a contemporary situation and all is in relation to the data. So urbanization data is extremely limited and all, and most of the majority of data regarding urbanization come from census. And unfortunately, we know how census stands today and all. We're not sure when we'll have it. Yeah? But nonetheless, it doesn't deter our spirit of doing something on urbanization. And I'll start, please. As far as urbanization is concerned, it's a very encompassing phenomena and all, and it really works at a very different level and all. It talks about region, it talks about agriculture, you have linkages with agriculture, you have industry, you have education. All forces, they interact as far as urbanization is concerned. But really, when we look at urbanization, we look through basically two mirrors: the mirror of opportunities, how urbanization adds to our quality of life, to facilities, to innovations, to socio-economic development, to exchange of ideas. On the other hand, we look at urbanization from the perspective of problems, the kind of social disintegration it creates, the social anomy, then environmental stress it creates, then the kind of inequality and deprivation. These are some of the things they really push urbanization to a level when urbanization starts attracting attention, what has been happening in urbanization and all. And urbanization has been a really greater policy and program initiative, and from the very beginning, 5-year plans, India has been emphasizing urbanization and all. At least we are talking about urbanization and all. And it has been estimated also that how urbanization can give a big push to the GDP of the country, GDP of the states, and it can, how it can raise our economic growth rates and all. That is one thing and all. And lot many things have happened in urbanization. I just summarized that we have initially that National Commission on urbanization starting, then we have all missions they have happened. And as far as urbanization is concerned, as a developing country, India has a process of urbanization. It was quite less the turn of the century. Around 11% people had they were living in the urban area, but by 2011 it reached around 30% and all. So it was good progress and all. This is what a developing country, which is mainly agriculture dependent, and resources are yet to be exploited industrially. So that happens in the estate. This is a classic textbook case of urbanization in India. But the problem when we look at urbanization at a pan-India level and we try to fit in the states, we find there is a very kind of diverse image we get, and we have the states in south, states in the north, and states in the west. They are much ahead of urbanization and all. But unfortunately, east, excluding West Bengal, east and northeast, they have been lagging. They have been tremendously lagging in urbanization, particularly Odisha, Bihar, and northeast Assam, Jharkhand, of course. So that is a crucial point to why urbanization, and we have some states, people have been comparing the pattern of urbanization in Punjab and pattern of urbanization in Odisha. Look at it, Punjab, it's less skewed. There are a lot of small towns. In Odisha, it's very different. The same thing we can compare with other states also. Odisha's urbanization. So urbanization has been in Odisha, it has never picked up. It is very stagnating, and if we look at the data on urban population, particularly how it is going to increase in next till 2036, we don't have data. The only data we have to project urban population is the expert committee data. So they project and all. They also are not much enthusiastic about the urbanization and all. The data, if you analyze, you get a feeling that urbanization will continue to be very slow in India till 2036. But I don't think that would be really so if you look at the change of land use and if you look at things what is happening in different urban sprawls around the main cities and all. Things are changing very fast. Unfortunately, one thing which could break this stereotype is if you had a census in 2021, it would have changed the whole concept of slow urbanization, because we all know the data of expert committee is based on past data. They just extrapolate and all on that. So it is very difficult and all. In any way, urbanization, we are placed in a state, and we have been talking all about urbanization in Odisha. It's almost all urbanization we are relating to industrialization. Everybody has been speaking and all. 1970s, we had a slogan of urbanization and all. Second steel plant in Odisha, then it will give a book to urbanization. If you look at most of the industrial cities in Odisha, I'll give you one example of Chaudhar, which is one of the earliest industrial cities. Odisha industrial town, and the kind of urban decline it is facing and all. You see, the moment the industry starts faltering and all, it has impact on urbanization. What kind of urbanization we have is basically seats of administration, pilgrimage towns and all, and little bit the surplus town, agriculture surplus town, mandis and all, and urbanization being around that. Except Raulkela and few other in western Odisha and some in coastal Odisha, lot of urbanization has happened without industrialization in Odisha. So that has been one of the bane of Odisha. But anyway, if you look at urbanization in Odisha, this is a quick figure to give you a basic idea. We see how slow has been urbanization in Odisha, getting little bit picked up after 1960s, then 1981. There is a very slow rise, but these are the departure points: 1961 and rather 1951 and 1991. And you look at urban growth rates in Odisha, we see that urban growth rates, it picked up during 1911 to 51 and all. It's basically 1961 it started rising, but after that urban growth rates, that is pace of urbanization, has been declining. So of course then we have to look at the factors which cause such a decline in growth of urban population. What really brings down the growth of urban population in a state in Odisha? And this happens with rise in the number of towns, right? The number of towns from in a century, 10 years and more, beyond a century, our number of towns increased from 14 to 223. And the towns have been rising up and all, but urban population is not rising. So that's a very interesting thing which comes out. And when you look at the individually decompose or individually we categorize the towns, and towns is a common word, and we look at all the towns and we see the different class of cities, and it's a comparison between 2001 and 2011. We find that the change is very different. You look at it, class 1, class 2, class 3, and all different towns. Class 6 towns, we must take into account that class 1 town, that is a town where the population is uh, 1 lakh and above, there is only entry, there is no exit from these towns. And in rest category towns, the small towns will enter, and might be after 10 years or 20 years, it will come out, it will go to next category. But class 1 towns, that's only entry, there is no exit and all. So that is how we look at that class 1 town, they have from 9 to 11 and all, but class 6 town from 6 to 32. But class 3 and class 4, their sizes have really stagnated between 2 census decades and all. And looking at concentration of urban population in India, you see this is a city rank and percentage. So how much of urban population the number 1 city, the number 1 town in Odisha counts for. So one can see that by 40% or 50% of the population, how many towns they cover and all. So one can see that here the high ranking towns, they are certainly contributing to a large of urban population in the state. And here are these towns which are top 10 towns of the state. We can call them as cities and all. And just hello.
ଆମର ଟିକେ ଇସ୍ୟୁ ଅଛି ଆପଣ ବର୍ତ୍ତମାନ ହେଲା ବର୍ତ୍ତମାନ ଆସିଲା ହଁ ବର୍ତ୍ତମାନ ହଁ ଟିକେ ବ୍ୟାକ୍ ଯାଇ କହିବେ ଆଉ
This is about the size class of the towns. Can you hear?
Can you go to the previous one? Because we lost connection for some time.
This is okay?
Previous one? Previous?
One more, I think. Bus.
Yes. This is about the urban population growth, and we see that after 61, there has been the pace of the growth. The speed of the growth is not picking up. Rather, it is on the reverse. It is declining after 61 and all. Our urban population may be rising, but urban population growth rate, decadal urban population growth rate is coming down. This is a kind of distress symbol. A state, a lot many things are supposed to be happening and all, but urban population growth rate is not picking up, it's coming down. So it is a reflection to these two aspects, that the agriculture, industry and trade. These 3 things are faltering and all that. These 3 things take to attract people to the cities and all. And during same period in a century, last century, there has been a rise in the towns of various sizes, all kind of towns included. So from 14 to 138. And between last decade, 2011, 2000, I mean census period and all, there has been a massive jump from 138 to 223. Of course, some people attribute it as a data artifact. In this sense, they say a lot of census towns have been included. Census town is a very different concept, less than 5,000 population, which is created for census. Small towns and all, they may not have any pronounced urban characteristics. For example, street lights, they may not have even that non-working male population in non-agricultural jobs, even they may lack density, but in spite of that, census authorities there are research. Some say it is quite census activities and all which has pushed up the number of towns in Odisha artificially, but others disagree. It has been academic debate and all. And this is the size class of the towns. We would see that all different classes of towns, and the class 1 is 1 lakh and above, and this is a typical census terminology and all, and class 6 is less than 5,000. We'd see that class 1 there is only entry of towns, because there is no class above class 1, so there will be only entry one way. That is one-way traffic. But class 2, there is both entry and exit. It will exit to class 1, it will enter from class 3. But if you look at the class, you will find that class 3 and class 4, the medium class towns have been virtually stagnating between 2001 2011. This is one thing, it comes out and all. And next is that what is the share? That is the first, all the rank towns are ranked to number 1 town, number 2, number 3, number 4. How much of population they contribute? Urban population, I mean, total urban population, what is their share? We would see that by 40-45%, most of the top towns, they cover near about 40-45% urban population and all. And next we see the towns, and we see that the top towns of Odisha, which contribute near 45% of urban population. And it's not a healthy symptom. When a few towns account for large urban population, this is called is a kind of primacy, urban primacy, and urban primacy is not a healthy factor of urban primacy. That means all services, all urban benefits will go to specific towns, and rest of the towns, rest of the urban population will be neglected, because we all know how in policy we have a threshold level and all, everything is categorized on the basis of a fixed population, urban population. Beyond that, things will come. And grants will come, facilities come, schemes will come, programs will come, but before that nothing will come. So that is 45% of Odisha's urban population stays in these 10 towns, and this is, and out of 2, you see Cuttack and Bhubaneswar, they are more than 20% and all. So this shows how skewed is the urbanization pattern. If you pick up this and look at it with Punjab, what is happening in Punjab bottom, this is entirely different. Punjab.
Maybe about 3 minutes or something.
Okay, I'll okay.
Yeah.
So this is the urban population and all, and this is the estimate. This is an estimate on the rank size, what should be. If you look for more non-skewed or more even urbanization pattern, what should be the town, the population of a town, and what is actually. This is the difference and all. It tells us skewed and all. Then we have level of urbanization, different districts and all, and you can see this graph, how it shows this picture. What are the really urban concentrations and there, and this is the northern NSSO classification of northern coastal region, how urbanization varies across coastal area. And this is migration. Actually, urbanization is mostly 3 components. One is the natural increase, that means difference between birth and death and all. Then net migration, then aerial reclassification, because some of the rural areas classified into urban areas. This happens in urban growth and all. So we find that one of the largest source of urban population, growth in urban population in Odisha, that comes from natural increase. In fact, it is not a net in migration, not aerial reclassification. That's the growth of existing urban population really adds to urban growth in Odisha. So, and we saw earlier that how this urbanization is stagnating and the pace is not picking up. And this is the migration figure relating to urban migration, and migration is not really contributing a lot. In fact, if you look at Odisha is a net losing state. Less people come and more move out of Odisha. So that is the thing. But it's interesting to analyze that in this context, why some people leave and why some come to Odisha. And this is a relative contribution of migration we have. I won't go into much, but I'll just share with you the chapter scheme that we are planning. Is that the first is that we'll have definition part and all, and data delimitation, data deficit part, because data deficit really constrains the urbanization study and all. And level and trends of urbanization was in pre-independent. We have evidence of very old ancient time medieval urbanization of India in western Odisha. You have close to Bhubaneswar, Sisupalgarh and all. In western Odisha, Asurgarh. We have some of the historians have really, like Sisir Panda and all, they have done good work on this that we have. Then, of course, our focus is largely on post-independence urbanization and urbanization starting from the turn of the century, because largely it is, we get data. This is, you can say it is convenience driven. Then we have type of urbanization, what is happening and all. Then, of course, we have the prospects of urbanization, the futuristic, what is going to happen, urban trajectory in Odisha. We have data till 2036 by expert group, but this data is not available district-wise. So we'll make a calculation and all, see how it is. Then we look at urban infrastructure, urban basic services and all. I don't know kind of data, but we have data on housing, we have growth of slums, we have always census data, drinking water, all these are all urban deprivation. They will talk about urban inclusiveness and all. We have data on waste disposal, of course not for all urban local bodies, but we have some of the leading local bodies we have. But another thing that this waste disposal or waste production is based on averages and all. Then urban household energy use. We have this data. It's both NFHS is giving. We have census, but we have NFHS also, and urban natural disaster management and all. Then of course migration. Migration is a factor because it is perceived to a factor and all. I don't know to what extent it is real, but we saw the contribution of migration in the urbanization process in the table I showed. Then of course we have interstate and intrastate migration in the urban areas of Odisha. This is available from census. Then urban-wide migration in SSO 64th round, we have data. We have also data on remittances that we are going to use. Then we are also going to little bit focus on urban finance, but now I understand there is a topic on fiscal. I think we will exclude it. Then issues of affordability of urban basic services. Then the progress in smart city mission and Amrut, which was earlier Jawaharlal Nehru National Urban Renewal Mission. Then urban planning violations and urban underbelly. Then of course we have that urban areas to be female friendly and all. We have data on domestic violence. We have LASI data on aging and all that can be used to do urban areas. Then with this I conclude. Thank you. Hello. Finish. Okay. Yes. Hello. Yes, you are. Okay. Any other? Let us pull all questions and I'll talk about once. No, it is really, I appreciate the point we have, and this point is that we should expand on this concept of smart city, Bhubaneswar, Raurkela, and all the components and all, because they lead to infrastructure, urban governance, and we have ranking also on smart cities. That is well accepted. That's yeah, and look. This is regarding this calculation of particularly how natural growth of a urban population feeds itself in Odisha. This comes out if you do an indirect decomposition analysis of urban growth in Odisha. Okay, and as I said also, if you look at migration figures, we always see that for both male and female, Odisha is an out-migrating state. Less male and less female have been coming to Odisha and then going out. That was till 2011. I wish it could change. I wish it could change, and it must have even changed. We don't have data and all, but the point is that that could it be reversed? Yes, could it be reversed? Certainly, it could be reversed, and yes, it could be certainly reversed, but that will again depend on the programs we have, industrialization, employment, education facilities we have. That takes us down to the questions of agricultural prosperity as well as industrial prosperity, because I see that we have been harping a lot on industrial-led urbanization. Look at the state of Punjab and Haryana. Their urbanization is led by agriculture. Both are possible. Both are possible. Odisha has virtually abandoned agriculture. When I look at the Odisha, we have given a by, but industry we have been harping 70s and all. But this can be done, and I hope the recent data, we have to examine the land use data. In fact, to see how things are changing, and because there is no other census, no data, a little bit we will use also PLFS data and see. Thank you. Thank you. No. Thank you, all the best. Wish you all the best. Okay, I take leave. Okay, namaskar. Oh yeah.